The air was thick with decay, the kind that clung to your clothes and crept under your skin. I pressed my back against the cold brick wall, every nerve in my body taut as a bowstring. Madison? Yes, Madison, the one person in this world I might have ever loved, stood close enough for me to feel her warmth. Her breath tickled my neck, an infuriatingly gentle reminder of everything I stood to lose. The shuffling of feet and low groans grew louder. The infected were near, their uncoordinated movements betraying an unnatural hunger. I'd learned early on to hate that sound. Not fear it, hate it. Fear was a weakness. Hate kept me sharp. They're passing, I muttered, barely audible. Madison's fingers found mine, her touch a whisper of trust one didn't deserve. It would have been sweet once. Now, it was just a tether. She didn't know how close I was to cutting it. "We need to get to the pharmacy," she said, her voice steady despite the situation. She always had this irritating optimism, this belief that we could keep going. "You're insulin. We can't wait." We moved through the ruined streets like ghosts, our steps silent amid the debris. I hated the pharmacy. I hated needing her. But most of all, I hated that she'd always find a way to fix things, even when I didn't want her to. Inside, the store was a mausoleum of shattered glass and overturned shelves. While Madison dug through the wreckage behind the counter, my eyes scanned the shadows. And there it was. A zombie staggered forward, its milky eyes locking onto me. I didn't hesitate. Swinging my bat, I aimed for its head. But the aisle was too narrow, the impact too weak. The creature's weight slammed into me, and we crashed into a shelf. Pain flared as canned goods rained down, but I didn't let go of the bat. "Damn it, Madison," I barked. She vaulted the counter with the precision of someone who still cared about survival. Her axe buried itself in the zombie's skull with a sickening crunch. The thing dropped, twitching, but not before its teeth sank into my shoulder. The pain was sharp, almost electric. I knew what it meant. "We've got to move," Madison said, her voice tight with suppressed panic. She was already helping me up, her eyes darting to the blood soaking my shirt. I didn't need her pity. I'd seen enough bites to know what came next. Fever, rage, death, or worse. We scrambled up the fire escape, the infected below snarling as they gathered around the base. The rooftop was quiet, save for our ragged breathing and the distant hum of the city's ruin. The sunset was crimson, the kind of picturesque scene that mocked the end of the world. My skin burned, fever already setting in. "You know what you have to do," I said, my voice low but firm. I pulled my pistol from its holster and pressed it into her hands. Madison's eyes filled with tears. I can't." Her hands trembled, but she didn't drop the gun. "You will," I replied. There was no room for softness in this. No room for weakness. "We made a promise, Madison." Her hands steadied, but her face was a battlefield of grief and resolve. She raised the gun, pressing it to my forehead. "I love you," she whispered, her voice breaking. I smiled, a cruel twist of my lips. "Then prove it." The gunshot shattered the silence, reverberating across the rooftops. For a moment, I thought she'd missed. But no, her aim had always been true. Pain flared, then faded. My world darkened, and I welcomed it. Or I thought I did. Until I woke up. The first thing I noticed was the absence of pain. My shoulder no longer throbbed, and the fever that had been clawing at my consciousness was gone. But I didn't feel alive either. There was a hollowness, a strange detachment that made the world seem sharper and colder. I opened my eyes to a night sky littered with stars. For a moment, I thought I was dead. Maybe this was some cruel afterlife, where you were forced to stare at beauty forever, unable to feel it. But then I heard her. "You're awake?" Madison's voice was quiet, almost reverent. She sat a few feet away, her back against a rooftop vent. Her hands were clasped together, knuckles white. She wasn't looking at me. She couldn't. I pushed myself up, my movements slow and deliberate. Every joint felt alien, like I was moving someone else's body. What happened? She finally turned to me, her eyes wide and red-rimmed. I couldn't do it, she admitted. I pulled the trigger, but I missed. I glanced down at my chest. The blood was there, dried and tacky against my skin, but no bullet wound. She hadn't missed entirely. The round had grazed me, enough to knock me out, but not enough to kill. A miracle, some might say. I wasn't so sure. You should have tried again, I said, my voice colder than I intended. You've doomed us both. Her face hardened, a flicker of the old Madison resurfacing. You don't get to blame me for this, she snapped. You wanted to give up. I didn't. I stood, testing my weight. My body obeyed, but it felt wrong, like a suit that didn't quite fit. It doesn't matter now, I said. I'm bitten. It's only a matter of time before I turn. She shook her head vehemently. No, I think you're different. That caught me off guard. Different? How? Madison hesitated, then rolled up her sleeve. The sight made my stomach churn. Her arm was a tapestry of scars, pale lines crisscrossing her skin. Bite marks, dozens of them, in varying stages of healing. I'm immune, she said simply. I have been since the beginning. I didn't tell you because I didn't think it mattered. But now, I stared at her, the implications sinking in. If she was immune, and if I, bitten and fevered, hadn't turned yet, then maybe you've passed it to me, I said, the words foreign on my tongue. She nodded slowly. It's possible. You're still you, aren't you? I clenched my fists, feeling the strength in them. My mind was sharp, my memories intact. For now, Madison stood, her determination renewed. Then we're not done. We find others. We test this. If it's real, we could save people. We could end this. Her words filled the empty space where fear had been. A purpose, as maddening as it was. I'd spent so long surviving, I'd forgotten what it meant to hope. But hope was dangerous. And as I looked out at the city below, its streets crawling with death, I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever had happened to me wasn't salvation. It was something else entirely.